She grew up in a small town where the streets were lined with old houses and the air always smelled faintly of fresh bread from the bakery down the road. Her family lived in a modest home, not large, but filled with warmth and the laughter of neighbors who often stopped by to chat. From the moment she could remember, she was drawn to music. She didn't just like it, she felt it in her bones. While other children ran through the fields or played ball in the dusty streets, she spent her time listening to the songs on the radio, trying to hum every note perfectly. Her parents noticed her fascination early on. They didn't know much about music themselves, but they saw her eyes light up when she heard a piano playing somewhere. Once, a friend of the family brought an old keyboard to their home, and she was immediately captivated. She would sit for hours, pressing the keys, exploring the sounds, and trying to copy the songs she had heard on the radio. Her fingers were small and clumsy at first, but there was a spark in her movements that hinted at something special. Neighbors would sometimes watch her practice and smile. Some called her talented, but most thought she was just a child having fun. Teachers at school were polite but did not take her seriously. They often gave her simple songs to play and praised her for completing them, thinking that was enough for a child of her age. They treated her like any other beginner, not realizing that her mind already understood the music in ways they could not see. Her room was her sanctuary. Every corner was filled with scraps of sheet music she found in second-hand shops or borrowed from the school library. She would copy notes and try to play them without anyone noticing. Sometimes, she stayed up late into the night, her fingers dancing across the keys, lost in the melodies that seemed to come naturally to her. Even when she made mistakes, she didn't feel frustrated. She was learning in her own way, finding patterns and sounds that no one had shown her yet. School was a different story. She often felt invisible, like her talents were a secret no one believed in. Teachers praised the students who followed instructions perfectly, who played by the rules and performed what was expected. They treated her like a novice, never imagining the depth of understanding she had already reached. When she tried to perform slightly more complicated pieces, they would tell her she was moving too fast or overreaching. She smiled and nodded, pretending to agree, but inside she felt a quiet determination. She knew she was capable of more. She didn't have many friends who understood her passion. Most of the other children spent their time chasing games and sports, and though they sometimes stopped to watch her play, they didn't stay long. They didn't understand why she would rather spend hours with a piano than run outside in the sun. But she didn't mind being alone with her music. In fact, she felt more alive when she played than anywhere else. The notes seemed to speak for her when words were not enough. Her family supported her as best as they could. Her parents didn't have money for formal lessons, but they encouraged her to practice and bought her small books of music when they could. They didn't know she was already far ahead of the beginner lessons they tried to provide. They were proud of her, but they had no idea that their daughter's fingers could soon do things that even professional musicians would admire. Still, their encouragement, simple as it was, gave her the confidence to continue. There were moments when she felt frustrated. Sometimes she would hear others performing perfectly and wonder if she would ever be able to reach that level. But then she would sit at the piano and play what came naturally, discovering harmonies and rhythms that felt right to her. She realized that her strength was not in copying others but in listening to the music inside her. This self-taught understanding became the foundation of her future mastery. One day, a local music teacher came to visit the school. He asked if any of the children wanted to demonstrate their skills. She was hesitant at first, unsure if she could impress someone who had studied music professionally. But something inside her urged her to try. When she began to play, the teacher's eyes widened. The piece was simple, but the expression, the flow, and the confidence were beyond her years. He had expected a beginner, and yet here was someone whose understanding of music seemed far deeper than that. He made a note to keep an eye on her, sensing a rare talent that most adults had overlooked. From that day, she began to think about music differently. She realized that even if others didn't understand her abilities, she could still explore them fully. Every day became a new opportunity to experiment, to learn, and to grow. She started borrowing more challenging sheet music from libraries and friends, playing pieces that no one had thought she could manage. She would play them slowly at first, then gradually, her fingers would find the right keys as if they had known the music all along. Her world was small but rich with sound. The piano became her companion, the place where she could express every feeling and thought she had. Joy, sadness, excitement, and wonder all found their voice in the music she created. Even when people ignored her talent or treated her as a beginner, she felt a deep connection to something greater. Music was not just an activity. It was a part of her identity, something that defined who she was. Neighbors began to notice subtle changes in her playing. Occasionally, they would stop and listen longer than before. They would whisper to each other, impressed by the ease and beauty with which she played. Some even started asking her to play for small gatherings, but still, she was treated with the expectation of a beginner. No one imagined the full extent of what she could achieve, and that, in a strange way, gave her freedom. She could practice, experiment, and grow without pressure, knowing that one day, her talent would speak for itself. At night, she would often lie in bed, imagining the music she wanted to create. She dreamed of performing in grand halls, playing for audiences who would be moved by every note. She imagined her fingers flying across the keys, producing sounds that could make people laugh, cry, and feel deeply. These dreams kept her going, even when the world around her seemed ordinary and slow. She also began to teach herself new techniques, watching videos when she could, listening carefully to recordings, and observing the movements of skilled pianists. She adapted their methods to her own style. Her practice was methodical but also filled with creativity. She was discovering not just how to play music, but how to make it her own. Every piece became a story she could tell, every melody a conversation with her audience, even if that audience was just her family or the empty walls of her room. Even as she grew older, the pattern remained the same. People treated her as someone learning, a novice with potential but nothing remarkable. They didn't see the hours she had spent perfecting her craft, the sleepless nights, or the relentless curiosity that drove her. But she didn't mind. The recognition would come later. For now, her joy came from the music itself, and from the quiet certainty that one day, the world would hear her as she truly was. Her early life was a mix of small victories and overlooked achievements. Every note she played, every melody she learned, was a step towards something greater. While the town and her school saw her as a beginner, she was quietly shaping herself into a musician with vision and skill beyond her years. And in that modest home, with the old piano that had become her closest friend, she was already beginning to write the first lines of her story as a piano legend. As she grew older, the world around her continued to treat her as if she were still a beginner. School teachers would assign her simple pieces to play, praising her for completing them without ever noticing how easily she mastered them. Other students assumed she was just another child with a hobby, someone who would never take music seriously. The misunderstandings did not bother her outwardly, but inside, she felt a quiet frustration. She knew she had something different, something rare, and yet she had to keep proving it in small, unnoticed ways. She spent hours practicing in secret, far beyond the lessons that others thought were enough. Every day, she would arrive home from school and sit at the piano, her fingers flying across the keys as she explored new melodies. She experimented with rhythm, with harmony, and with emotion, learning to express herself in ways that went far beyond what the sheet music told her. Mistakes were not failures. They were steps toward understanding the music on a deeper level. Each note she played added to her growing confidence, even if no one else seemed to notice. Her family tried to support her as best they could. They bought her small music books when they could afford them and cheered when she performed simple tunes for them. They were proud, but they still saw her as a talented child, not as someone who could one day become extraordinary. The lack of understanding from those around her became something she had to navigate carefully. She learned to hide her more advanced experiments and only reveal what others expected, all the while developing her skills in private. At school, her peers often teased her. They didn't understand why she preferred the quiet of a piano to the chaos of their games and conversations. Some mocked her for being serious, for spending hours practicing instead of playing outside. But she found strength in her solitude. When she played, She felt alive in a way that nothing else could give her. The laughter of her classmates faded into the background, and the music became her refuge. Occasionally, she would try to show her abilities to teachers or classmates, only to be dismissed. She once performed a piece that she had mastered on her own, adding her own interpretations and flourishes, but the teacher only nodded politely, saying she should focus on the simpler exercises. It hurt, but she did not stop. She realized that recognition from others was not the measure of her talent. She played because she had to, because the music was inside her and could not be ignored. Her self-directed learning became more sophisticated with time. She began to explore different styles, learning classical pieces from the past, as well as modern songs that challenged her creativity. She listened closely to recordings, imitating the subtle nuances of each performance, and then adding her own twists. Her fingers learned to move with a natural fluidity that seemed almost effortless. While others still saw her as a novice, she was quietly mastering techniques that even older students struggled with. There were moments when her efforts went completely unnoticed. She played at small community events, performing for neighbors who smiled and clapped politely, but did not fully grasp the depth of her skill. At these times, she felt both joy and a strange sadness. The joy came from sharing her music, even in small ways. The sadness came from knowing that the world still underestimated her abilities. She learned to balance these feelings, understanding that recognition would come in time. Her determination was tested in many ways. Some days, she would return home exhausted from school and feel discouraged because no one seemed to understand her. But she never let these feelings stop her. She would sit at the piano, close her eyes, and lose herself in the music. Each practice session became a personal victory, a small step toward the mastery she knew she could achieve. She started setting her own goals, challenging herself to play pieces that were considered difficult even for older students. Every time she succeeded, her confidence grew. Her growing independence in music also taught her patience and discipline. She learned to focus on every detail of her playing, to listen carefully to the sound she produced, and to correct herself without external guidance. She discovered that true skill did not come from applause or recognition but from the constant pursuit of improvement. This understanding became a cornerstone of her development, shaping not only her musical abilities, but her character as well. Sometimes, she found inspiration in unexpected places. She would watch birds moving in the sky and imagine their flight translated into music. She would listen to the rhythm of rain on the roof and try to mimic it on the keys. She found that music was everywhere, and she could learn from anything if she paid attention. Her imagination became a powerful tool, allowing her to create melodies that were uniquely her own. Even if others saw her as a beginner, she knew that her creativity was growing beyond any limits. Her relationship with the piano became almost sacred. It was more than an instrument. It was a companion, a teacher, and a friend. She poured her emotions into every note, finding comfort and expression that words could never provide. She experimented with speed and timing, with the softest whispers of sound and the loudest bursts of energy. Each session brought new discoveries, and each discovery brought a sense of wonder and accomplishment. She was building a foundation that would support her future greatness, piece by piece. Despite the constant underestimation, she never lost hope. She believed that one day, someone would truly see her talent. The thought of performing for an audience that understood her music kept her motivated. She imagined moments when she would surprise people, when her playing would defy expectations and leave them speechless. These visions were not fantasies. They were goals she worked toward with every practice session, every new melody, and every challenge she overcame. Her determination sometimes led her into unusual situations. She would stay up late, quietly practicing so as not to disturb her family, or wake early before school to play when the house was still. She experimented with different sounds, sometimes creating pieces that no one else had ever heard. She recorded herself on small devices, listening later to find areas for improvement. She treated each mistake as a lesson and each success as proof of her growing skill. Slowly but surely, she was transforming from a child who was treated like a novice into a musician with her own voice and style. One afternoon, she was asked to perform at a school event. The organizers assumed it would be a simple performance, suitable for a beginner. But she had prepared something more ambitious, a piece that she had learned on her own and made her own through subtle variations and expressive phrasing. When she began to play, the room went quiet. People who had always dismissed her began to notice the depth of her skill. Though some were still skeptical, others were genuinely impressed. This small moment gave her a taste of what was possible when her talent was recognized. Even after such moments, she remained humble and focused. She did not play to impress. She played because the music demanded it. Her passion was stronger than any desire for recognition, and that inner drive fueled her daily practice. She understood that the path to mastery was long and required patience, and she was willing to dedicate herself completely to it. Her journey through this period of underestimation shaped not only her abilities but her character. She learned resilience, patience, and the importance of self-belief. She discovered that true growth often occurs away from the spotlight, in quiet moments of dedication and reflection. While others saw her as a beginner, she was quietly building the foundation of a future that would eventually astonish everyone. Through all these experiences, she never lost her love for music. It remained the center of her world, a source of joy, comfort, and inspiration. Even when others doubted her, she trusted herself and her abilities. She understood that mastery was not about immediate recognition but about continuous learning, experimentation, and dedication. This understanding carried her through the challenges of being underestimated and kept her moving forward, step by step, toward the greatness that lay ahead. The day of the small recital arrived, and she felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. She had practiced for weeks, refining every note and expression in the piece she had chosen. While most of the children were used to performing simple tunes, she had prepared something much more challenging, a piece that she had learned and interpreted on her own. Her heart pounded as she walked onto the stage, the soft lights illuminating the piano and the faces of the audience that had gathered. Most of them were parents, teachers, and local townspeople who expected another ordinary performance from a child. As she sat down and placed her fingers on the keys, the room grew quiet. The murmurs and whispers faded, replaced by a sense of anticipation. She took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes flowed smoothly, confident and precise, but it was the emotion behind them that caught the audience by surprise. Her hands moved gracefully, each note carrying a story, each pause a subtle expression of feeling. People who had thought of her as just another beginner started to lean forward, curious and intrigued. The piece built in complexity, and her fingers danced across the keys with an effortless skill that seemed almost magical. She added nuances and variations she had discovered through her own experimentation, giving the music a depth that no one had expected from a child. Some of the older musicians in the audience exchanged astonished glances, realizing that they were witnessing something far beyond a beginner's performance. Even the teachers who had always treated her as a novice could not hide their surprise. By the time she reached the final notes, the room was silent for a moment, as if everyone had collectively held their breath. Then, applause erupted, louder and more enthusiastic than she had ever heard before. People stood, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes. She felt a rush of joy, but also a quiet sense of vindication. For the first time, her talent was recognized not just as a hobby, but as something extraordinary. After the recital, several musicians approached her, offering compliments and asking questions about her practice and techniques. They wanted to understand how she had achieved such mastery at such a young age. She answered modestly, explaining that she loved to explore the piano on her own and that she practiced a lot. They nodded, impressed not only by her skill but by her dedication and maturity. The day of the small recital arrived, and she felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. She had practiced for weeks, refining every note and expression in the piece she had chosen. While most of the children were used to performing simple tunes, she had prepared something much more challenging, a piece that she had learned and interpreted on her own. Her heart pounded as she walked onto the stage, the soft lights illuminating the piano and the faces of the audience that had gathered. Most of them were parents, teachers, and local townspeople who expected another ordinary performance from a child. As she sat down and placed her fingers on the keys, the room grew quiet. The murmurs and whispers faded, replaced by a sense of anticipation. She took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes flowed smoothly, confident and precise, but it was the emotion behind them that caught the audience by surprise. Her hands moved gracefully, each note carrying a story, each pause a subtle expression of feeling. People who had thought of her as just another beginner started to lean forward, curious and intrigued. The piece built in complexity, and her fingers danced across the keys with an effortless skill that seemed almost magical. She added nuances and variations she had discovered through her own experimentation, giving the music a depth that no one had expected from a child. Some of the older musicians in the audience exchanged astonished glances, realizing that they were witnessing something far beyond a beginner's performance. Even the teachers who had always treated her as a novice could not hide their surprise. By the time she reached the final notes, the room was silent for a moment, as if everyone had collectively held their breath. Then, applause erupted, louder and more enthusiastic than she had ever heard before. People stood, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes. She felt a rush of joy, but also a quiet sense of vindication. For the first time, her talent was recognized not just as a hobby, but as something extraordinary. After the recital, several musicians approached her, offering compliments and asking questions about her practice and techniques. They wanted to understand how she had achieved such mastery at such a young age. She answered modestly, explaining that she loved to explore the piano on her own and that she practiced a lot. They nodded, impressed not only by her skill but by her dedication and maturity. This moment of recognition marked a turning point in her journey. While she had always known her own abilities, having others see them in such a clear and undeniable way gave her confidence and motivation. She realized that while being underestimated had taught her patience and resilience, there was also value in sharing her talent with the world. From that day forward, she approached her practice with renewed energy, eager to continue growing and to surprise those who had doubted her. News of her performance spread through the town, and soon she was invited to play at other local events. Each performance was an opportunity to challenge herself further. She began to choose pieces that were considered advanced, experimenting with expression, tempo, and interpretation. Audiences were consistently amazed by her ability to bring music to life, transforming notes on a page into stories and emotions that touched everyone who listened. Despite her growing reputation, she remained humble and focused on her craft. She understood that mastery required more than just talent. It demanded discipline, dedication, and a constant willingness to learn. She continued to practice diligently, sometimes staying up late into the night or waking early to play before school. Each day was a chance to improve, to explore new techniques, and to discover new ways to express herself through music. Her family watched with pride and amazement as she continued to evolve as a musician. They had always known she was talented, but even they were surprised by the depth and sophistication of her playing. They supported her in every way they could, attending performances, providing encouragement, and helping her find new opportunities to grow. Their belief in her became a foundation that allowed her to pursue her dreams with confidence and determination. At school, her peers began to see her in a new light. Those who had once dismissed her as a beginner now watched with respect and admiration. Some were inspired to take their own musical pursuits more seriously, while others simply appreciated the beauty and emotion she brought to every performance. She navigated these changes with grace, never allowing attention to distract her from the work she loved. Her experiences during this period taught her important lessons about resilience and self-belief. She realized that being underestimated could be both a challenge and an opportunity. It pushed her to develop her skills independently, to think creatively, and to rely on her own judgment. At the same time, the moments of recognition reminded her that her efforts were meaningful and could inspire others. As she continued to perform, she encountered new challenges that tested her abilities in different ways. Some pieces required technical precision and speed, while others demanded emotional depth and interpretation. She approached each challenge with curiosity and determination, experimenting with different techniques and refining her approach. She learned to listen carefully to her own playing, to adjust and improve, and to trust her instincts. Her growing skill and confidence began to attract attention beyond her town. Musicians and teachers from neighboring areas heard about her performances and invited her to play at larger events. She traveled to new places, performing for audiences who had never seen her before. Each performance was an opportunity to connect with people through music, to communicate emotions that words could not capture. She began to understand the power of music to move and inspire, and she embraced this responsibility with maturity beyond her years. Through all of this, she never lost her love for the piano. Even as her reputation grew and the audiences became larger, she played for the joy of music itself. She continued to explore new pieces, to experiment with different styles, and to discover the endless possibilities of expression. Her practice remained a personal journey, a way to challenge herself and to grow as an artist. She also began to mentor other children who showed interest in music. She shared what she had learned through years of self-directed practice, offering guidance and encouragement. She did not teach in the traditional sense. Instead, she inspired others to explore music on their own, to experiment, and to find their own voice. In doing so, she discovered the joy of helping others grow, and she saw the impact that her journey could have on the lives of those around her. Despite the recognition and opportunities, she remained grounded. She knew that mastery was a lifelong pursuit and that there was always more to learn. She approached every new piece and every performance with humility, curiosity, and dedication. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Success required effort, discipline, and a willingness to push beyond comfort zones. Her journey during this period was marked by both personal growth and public recognition. She learned to navigate the challenges of being noticed, to handle the expectations of audiences, and to continue developing her skills independently. She discovered the importance of resilience, patience, and self-belief, and she experienced the joy of connecting with others through music. Through every performance, she reminded herself of the child she had been, playing in a quiet room, unnoticed and underestimated. That memory kept her humble and focused, and it fueled her passion for music. She knew that her journey was far from over, and that greater challenges and opportunities awaited her. But she also knew that she was ready to face them, armed with talent, dedication, and a love for music that could not be diminished. By the end of this stage of her life, she had begun to establish herself as a remarkable musician, one whose talent could not be ignored. She had proven that being underestimated did not define her, and that persistence, creativity, and passion could overcome doubt. The small recital had been the first step in a long journey, and she had taken it with courage and skill, setting the stage for the even greater achievements that lay ahead. Her life began to change as more people discovered her talent. Invitations to perform at bigger events started to come in, and she found herself traveling to towns and cities she had never been to before. Each new stage was an opportunity to challenge herself, to play more difficult pieces, and to connect with audiences that expected excellence. The pressure was greater than anything she had experienced before, but it also excited her. She realized that she had come a long way from the small room where she first practiced in secret. The expectations of others were a new challenge. Teachers, event organizers, and even some musicians began to assume that she should perform flawlessly, every time without hesitation. The praise she had once received for simple performances was replaced by a demand for consistency and perfection. At first, this was intimidating, and she sometimes doubted herself. But she remembered the years of self-directed practice, the quiet hours alone at the piano, and the small victories that no one had witnessed. She drew strength from that foundation, trusting that her dedication had prepared her for this stage. Traveling to perform brought new experiences and new learning opportunities. She observed other musicians, listened to the techniques of professionals, and studied performances in ways she had never been able to do before. Each encounter taught her something new, whether it was a subtle shift in tempo, a different approach to phrasing, or the way an artist could communicate emotion through posture and touch. She absorbed these lessons without losing her own style, adding them to the foundation she had built herself. Despite the growing recognition, she remained humble and focused. Fame was not her goal. Mastery was. She continued to practice diligently, refining her technique, experimenting with interpretations, and discovering new possibilities in music. She faced technical challenges in pieces she had never attempted before, and each mistake became a learning opportunity. She learned to analyze her performance critically, understanding both the strengths and areas that needed improvement. Her family continued to support her, proud of her accomplishments but also concerned about the long hours she dedicated to music. They reminded her to rest, to take care of herself, and to maintain balance in her life. She appreciated their concern but knew that her passion could not be contained by schedules or routines. Music was a calling, not just an activity, and she felt compelled to follow it wherever it led. She encountered both admiration and skepticism from those she met on her travels. Some audiences were immediately captivated by her performances, recognizing the depth of her talent. Others remained doubtful, perhaps expecting a child to play with the limitations they had imagined. She learned to meet skepticism with quiet confidence, letting her playing speak for itself. Over time, even the most doubtful observers began to acknowledge her skill, often with amazement. Her personal life was also shaped by these experiences. She learned the importance of discipline, focus, and patience, and these qualities influenced other areas of her life. She managed school, practice, and performances with careful planning, and she developed a sense of responsibility toward her own growth. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Perseverance, hard work, and strategic thinking were equally important. She also began to encounter more complex musical challenges. Pieces that demanded rapid finger movements, intricate coordination, and deep emotional expression tested her in new ways. Some performances left her physically and emotionally drained, but she never allowed fatigue to diminish her commitment. She discovered that her mind and body were capable of more than she had imagined, and that pushing beyond comfort zones led to extraordinary results. In addition to technical challenges, she faced moments of self-doubt. Even with growing recognition, she sometimes questioned whether she was truly ready for the opportunities she was receiving. She worried about making mistakes in front of larger audiences or failing to meet the expectations she had set for herself. These moments were difficult, but she learned to manage them by returning to her practice, focusing on preparation, and trusting the skills she had developed over years of dedicated effort. Her dedication to music also brought new relationships and collaborations. She met other musicians who shared her passion and exchanged ideas, learning from their experiences and perspectives. These interactions enriched her understanding of music, providing fresh inspiration and insight. She began to see music as a living, evolving art form, one that thrived on interaction and shared creativity. She also recognized the responsibility that came with her growing reputation. Audiences were inspired by her talent, and she realized that she could influence and motivate others through her example. She continued to mentor younger students, encouraging them to explore music with curiosity and dedication. She emphasized that success was not about immediate recognition but about persistence, practice, and love for the craft. This mentorship became an important part of her journey, reinforcing her own commitment and sense of purpose. As she performed in larger venues, she learned to manage the physical and emotional demands of being on stage. She developed routines to calm nerves before performances, to maintain focus during challenging pieces, and to recover afterward. She understood that preparation was not just about mastering the music but also about cultivating the mental and physical stamina required to perform consistently at a high level. Through all these experiences, she maintained her unique voice. She experimented with interpretations, adding personal touches to each piece that reflected her understanding and emotion. She refused to play mechanically or to conform entirely to the expectations of others. Her music remained authentic, a reflection of her journey, her experiences, and her passion. Audiences responded to this authenticity, connecting with the emotion and depth of her performances. Her journey during this period was marked by growth, challenges, and achievements. She learned to navigate fame, manage expectations, and maintain focus on her own development. She discovered that mastery was not a destination but a continuous process, one that required dedication, resilience, and self-belief. Each performance, each challenge, and each success contributed to her evolution as a musician and as a person. She also faced moments of isolation. The demands of practice, travel, and performance sometimes made it difficult to maintain social connections or participate in typical activities for her age. While this could be lonely, she found comfort in the music itself, in the sense of purpose it provided, and in the growing recognition of her talent. She understood that her path was different from that of her peers, and she embraced it fully. Her performances began to leave lasting impressions on audiences. People remembered not just the technical skill but the emotion, the storytelling, and the depth of understanding she brought to each piece. She began to realize the impact of her music, how it could move people, evoke memories, and inspire emotion. This realization added new meaning to her practice, reinforcing her commitment to explore and grow. Despite increasing recognition, she remained grounded. She knew that challenges would continue and that each new stage would present opportunities for growth. She embraced this reality with enthusiasm and discipline, focusing on continuous improvement and authentic expression. She recognized that her journey was long and that the lessons she learned along the way were as important as the accolades she received. Her journey during this time was a testament to the power of dedication, perseverance, and passion. She demonstrated that talent alone was not sufficient. It required hard work, resilience, and the courage to face challenges and push beyond expectations. She continued to grow as a musician and as a person, preparing for the even greater opportunities and achievements that awaited her. By the end of this stage, she had established herself as a rising star in her field. Her talent was widely recognized, her performances inspired and moved audiences, and her skills continued to develop with each challenge. She had overcome underestimation, embraced opportunities for growth, and maintained her passion and authenticity. Her journey was far from complete, but she had laid the foundation for the legendary musician she was destined to become. Years passed, and her talent became impossible to ignore. She had traveled to many towns and cities, performed in small halls, and gradually moved to larger venues. People who had once treated her as a beginner now spoke of her with admiration and even awe. The quiet child who had practiced for hours in a small room had grown into a musician whose skill could astonish anyone who heard her play. Her performances began to attract the attention of professional musicians and critics. They recognized not just her technical mastery, but also the emotion, depth, and creativity in her music. She could make the piano sing, whisper, and roar all in a single piece. Audiences were moved in ways they could not have expected, feeling every note as if it were speaking directly to them. Even those who had doubted her in the past found themselves humbled by the power of her performances. Despite the growing recognition, she remained humble and grounded. Fame was not her goal. Music was. She continued to practice tirelessly, exploring new pieces and styles, refining her technique, and experimenting with interpretation. She knew that there was always more to learn, always another challenge to conquer. Her dedication and love for music remained at the heart of everything she did. She also became a mentor to young musicians, sharing what she had learned through years of self-directed practice and performance. She encouraged them to explore music on their own, to find their unique voices, and to dedicate themselves fully to the craft. She emphasized that true mastery came from passion, persistence, and patience, not just recognition or applause. In teaching others, she found joy and a renewed sense of purpose. Her family watched with pride and wonder as she achieved what once seemed impossible. They remembered the little girl who had tapped on makeshift keys, who had practiced quietly when no one was watching. Now she played in front of audiences who hung on every note. Their support and belief in her had been constant, and she often thought of them before every performance, drawing strength from their love. Performing in larger venues brought new challenges. She had to maintain her focus, manage nerves, and meet high expectations, both her own and those of her audiences. There were moments of doubt, moments when the pressure seemed overwhelming. But she faced each challenge with determination, remembering that her years of practice and self-study had prepared her for this. Every performance became an opportunity to grow, to connect with people, and to express herself fully through music. As her reputation grew, invitations to prestigious events and collaborations with renowned musicians arrived. She performed in concerts that were broadcast and recorded, reaching audiences far beyond her hometown. People marveled at her ability to interpret music in ways that felt personal and fresh. Her performances were described as moving, profound, and unforgettable, and she became recognized as a true master of the piano. Despite her success, she never forgot her beginnings. She continued to play for herself, in quiet moments at home, exploring new ideas and experimenting with melodies. She understood that recognition and fame were temporary, but the joy of music and the pursuit of mastery were enduring. This mindset kept her grounded and focused, allowing her to continue growing as an artist. Her journey was also marked by moments of reflection. She thought about the years when people had treated her like a novice, never imagining the depth of her talent. Those experiences had shaped her, teaching her resilience, patience, and the importance of self-belief. She realized that being underestimated had allowed her to develop her own style, to experiment freely, and to build a foundation that no one could take away. In interviews and public appearances, she often spoke about the importance of perseverance and passion. She encouraged young musicians to trust themselves, to practice diligently, and to embrace challenges as opportunities for growth. Her story became an inspiration to many, demonstrating that talent, when combined with dedication and belief in oneself, could overcome doubt and expectation. As she performed on grand stages, she felt a deep connection with her audiences. She could see the emotions her music evoked, the smiles, the tears, the moments of quiet reflection. This connection gave her performances meaning beyond technical excellence. She understood that music was a bridge between people, a way to communicate feelings and experiences that words could not convey. She poured her heart into every note, making each performance a personal journey for both herself and her listeners. Her journey also included moments of personal challenge. The demands of travel, practice, and performance sometimes left her exhausted, and balancing her life became difficult. But she learned to manage her energy, to rest when necessary, and to maintain focus on her goals. These challenges strengthened her resolve and taught her valuable lessons about discipline, self-care, and balance. Throughout her rise to prominence, she remained committed to authenticity. She refused to compromise her style or play in a way that did not feel true to her understanding of the music. Every piece she performed reflected her creativity, insight, and emotion. Audiences responded to this authenticity, connecting deeply with her music and appreciating the honesty and beauty in every performance. Her achievements were celebrated, but she continued to view them as milestones rather than endpoints. She knew that mastery was a lifelong pursuit, and that there was always more to explore, learn, and express. Each concert, each new piece, each interaction with other musicians contributed to her ongoing growth and development. She embraced this journey with joy, curiosity, and dedication. By now, she was recognized as a piano legend, not just in her town or region, but far beyond. Her talent, once underestimated, had become undeniable, and she had proven to everyone who doubted her that she was extraordinary. Her story was a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and belief in oneself. She had transformed from the quiet child practicing in secret to a musician whose performances inspired and moved countless people. Even as her reputation grew, she continued to find joy in the simple act of playing the piano. She explored new compositions, created her own interpretations, and experimented with ideas that pushed the boundaries of her art. Her love for music remained at the center of her life, guiding her choices, inspiring her performances, and fueling her ongoing pursuit of excellence. In the end, her journey was about more than recognition or fame. It was about the fulfillment of her potential, the expression of her deepest emotions, and the connection she could make with others through music. She had proven that talent, when nurtured with dedication and belief, could overcome doubt, skepticism, and underestimation. Her story became an inspiration, showing that greatness often begins quietly, grows through perseverance, and ultimately shines for the world to see. She reflected on the path she had traveled, from the small room where she practiced alone, to the grand stages where audiences were captivated by her skill. Every challenge, every moment of doubt, and every hour of practice had led her to this point. She realized that the journey itself had been as important as the destination, shaping her not only as a musician but as a person. As she continued to perform and explore music, she knew that her story was still unfolding. There were new challenges to face, new pieces to learn, and new audiences to inspire. But she approached the future with confidence, knowing that her talent, dedication, and passion would guide her. The child once treated as a novice had become a piano legend, a testament to the power of persistence, belief, and the enduring love of music.